the Tongva people and the indigenous people, seeing ways where we can be good guests and good relatives.
So, people say that I look like one of those foods from Blood In, Blood Out. But maybe that was when I was in high school and I had like my hair bleached.
What the heck? Which guy?
I guess the wetito.
Juanito.
Yeah.
All right.
Um.
Can you hear us now, Teresa?
Yeah, let us know if you can hear us.
All right. We're on Instagram.
Yeah, there's 2 lives going on. All right.
Yes,
if you're from a big city, you're probably familiar with gentrification, because it's like it is, neo.
Colonialism.
Yeah. And like, if like so, us talking about Flat Top Hill and Lincoln Heights probably brings up spaces wherever you're at. But like, what's been happening there is like they've been doing like kind of private events on a public space, and then in these like private events they like charge, and then they're like doing like sound bathing and using like Eastern medicines, but they're like white people, so they're like taking up all this space in this like hill in this low income community in LA, but it's because of its proximity to like other parts of LA, it other people from other places I guess are coming around. I haven't been to one of these shenanigan banger blasters.
Manifest Destiny parties.
Manifest Destiny Mania. Manifest Destiny Mania Music Festival. Catch it on Flat Top Hill over there in Lincoln Heights. Yeah.
There's a lot of ignorance, and I still want to keep that humanity approach, even though we can definitely see a lot of the settler colonial undertones, especially the fact that they call usually folks who are coming in and have a lot of money, or just what we call transients. They call LA like, oh, here's the hidden gem, here's the secret spot, hey guys, let me tell you what I found and I discovered.
Oh yeah, it's
so
a discovery trip.
That discovery, that tourism, right? So tourism, I just say tourism is part of colonial culture, part of settler colonial culture. I'm sure it's innate within us to want to go and explore and have adventures, but we carry stories with us, and there's stories and there's ancestors on all the lands that every part of the earth. So
yeah, and like for sure, like traveling can be done. It's just in the like extractive lifestyles of like today, what traveling isn't like reciprocal. It's always like one-sided, and then the like invader is like getting all the pleasure, and then the like all the what do they call it, those big old boats, those circus. They're not the cruises.
Yachts, the cruises.
Yeah. Cruises are bracketing in all their money, and like but then it's like wherever it's at, like locals are either constantly being like disadvantaged, or there's just not like reciprocity. And I think like reflections of like ancestral like evidence of like continental migration, like that didn't end up with like hundreds of million indigenous people dead, like shows that like there were like cultural exchanges, and that there was trading, and there's like mutual respect, and that like, so that traveling like can be done in that way. Like if you're going somewhere, know like what land you're going to, or who are the like ancestors of that land, or to like, or like know if you're like going, like the example like Hawaii, a lot of time people go to Hawaii and don't know that that's like continuing like that's like that's just like continuing tourism that like the local native people are like saying is like not beneficial, and then like I think because of like Teresa have spent a good amount of time with Kumi Mikilani, you can like share about what traveling has like in Hawaii and that yeah.
I think, what I wanted to do, or with the video, is just be able to articulate, settler colonialism and like my own feelings against it, in a like lighthearted, but using sarcasm to address it, because it's stories are tied to the land, and so is ceremony. And for example, I always use this example, but you think of like Dodger Stadium. People from LA love the Dodgers. People from LA go to these baseball games. They partake in events and gatherings, and then they have this history tied to that Dodger Stadium. And then we know the history of the Chavez Ravine and those displaced people, due to eminent domain and a lot of the settler colonial violence. But we are still part of this ongoing story of our people, us as relocated, displaced, but trying to be rooted in a good way to these lands. Even though these might not be our ancestral lands, it's important to try to unpack and learn. Hey, what used to be here or what is here. So part of the work that we do, like with Regenerative Collective, is learning how to tend to the land stewardship. I remember I saw a post about the Spanish mustard and like the Camino Real, which was a trail to tell all the Spanish colonizers of, hey, where our missions are at. So they planted all this yellow Spanish mustard growing along these trails to let them know this is where the missions are this is the trail to lead us to certain missions. So now I know a little bit of how the plants tell that story, and especially the non-native invasive plants.
Yeah, because they did that with palm trees too. I remember going to that spring with y'all, and then learning that like they'd put palm trees where there was water at,
and they grow tall so you can see them from far away. So land is always connected to stories, whether we call like this space right here, it's a arts conservancy for the youth and for the local community. I rehearse across the street. We've done gardening right here. So my family grew up right here. So there's stories we can share as local people of color, low income folks. And I'm just saying those because that's our positionality within this white supremacist settler colonial system. But fortunately through TikTok and Instagram and all this social media and this technology, right? Technology has always been a way for us to figure out and share our stories. And I feel like I didn't intend for the video to go barely like a little tiny bit viral, but I'm glad it did. People started reaching out, and the people that did reach out were locals too. So I'm like, yo, that's what's up. They were locals.
Humor. He's like in the video. He's like, "Hi everybody, I'm Christopher Columbus. We're doing this shindig here at the park, and you come through. We're handing out Manifest Destiny pamphlets, and so on and so on. It's funny. But maybe you want to scoot over a little bit over there, and then I'll just like reposition those.
Okay. You smell me, huh?
Yeah, you smell like onions and dirt. Just kidding.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was eating.
You're planting and eating.
Oh, you can move that.
No, I'll move this a little bit too. Finger banger blasters.
That's what I guess we are now. This is the finger banger blaster show.
Hour. Yeah. Blaster banger hour.
Oh shit.
Catch us whenever we want to be caught.
Yeah, but I mean,
you kind of started bringing in the peoplehood matrix, and that's a really cool thing that the collective, Regenerative Collective, like the first time I met y'all were like presenting on that, and to think about that, because just to like create a visual analogy of what the peoplehood matrix is, there's 4 circles. This one, this one, this one, this one. This one is.
Land,
This one is.
language,
This one is.
history, but I like saying stories.
And this one.
Ceremony.
No, they got these connections going on in between, and they got these spider webs attached. And all those, like, so like, when reflecting on the peoplehood matrix, I notice how those words are like, are, and the interpretation of it could be like applied anywhere, kind of in any way, right? And y'all gave good examples and kind of talking about like this specific place, Flat Top Hill. It's a place. Its stories have its different like uses, but currently there's a story of like it being like gentrified and discovered and exploited, and then language. There's various languages, or maybe what is the language of like being in compliance with, like, or the language that creates the like occupation of that space, like
There's already a peoplehood everywhere. Wherever you come from, wherever you were born, your school, you know what I mean? When you go to school, maybe elementary school, you have the playground, right? So you meet up with your homies. You guys maybe have like your own handshake. You guys have like maybe some games you play. You know, you vibe. There's always a peoplehood. You know, your support system. And then at a larger sense, right? So the peoplehood matrix was trying to just say, you know, the peoplehood matrix came about because a lot of these indigenous scholars, when they were studying Native people, there's too much umbrella and overgeneralization. And there's ideas of like talking about and studying Native people in terms of tribes, and then there's talking about Native people in terms of nations, and each of those terms have specific, you know, meanings to depending on what, you know, even the government, right? So the government won't really take treaties that serious because it's only treaties with tribes, and tribes are only a certain amount of people, versus treaties with states, which states means institutions, maybe a few thousand people, maybe even a few million people. So this settler colonial government really only takes seriousness with other settler colonial governments or ways of you know, what we say, organizing and empower, oppressing people. So peoplehood is like, well, that's what we are. Like there's a lot of movements of folks trying to reclaim their roots, and in doing so, they're connecting with other people who vibe the same way, and they're creating their own little peoplehood, you know? And sometimes it might even cause erasure, right? Sometimes people start identifying themselves, like, you know, there's a lot of like, there was that moment, or still growing moment, of like Aslan, and like people saying like, oh, you know, this was Aslan and all that, but then you have the Tongva people, the Chumash, the Tataviam, and folks, you know, within these regions are like, no, our people have been here for thousands of years, you know.
That's a lot for him to say it, to bring up, because yeah, my dad's band's name is Aslan Underground, and like they were like a part of they're like a reflection of the Chicano movement in the 90s, and they were kind of always like keen about like clarifying. We were talking about Aslan, the mythical place, but the notions and like understanding of Aslan, there's like because of Peace and Dignity journeys, there was like this like interweaving of like that Chicano understanding that like that went from like, well let's, you know, take our like our fire of our prayer, because we're like regenerating who we are and recognizing ourselves as indigenous, and connect with the people of the place where those places are. Yeah. So, but yeah, that's like a reflection of that, like that movement without that clarity, because like
diaspora, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, I know my Nino spoke like Nahuatl, you know, but like I know he was Masawa, and I know that it was probably conditional to like his survival, and the way the language played into like his tribe, his our people being like so close to Mexico City.
Yeah.
Um,
There's
yeah.
always gonna be, again, because identity is tricky, right? And especially when we know that identity has been used to oppress people, especially within the settler colonial, government and their institutions, right? You have an ID card specifically that says you have these privileges, and if you don't have this, then you don't have privileges on these territories. And I say this because I work in homeless services, and so there's terms and definitions. A homeless person by the LA County means someone who's been on the street literally for at least a year. So what do you call people who've only been couch surfing, or people who've only been staying out on the street for a month? Well, since they don't fit that term, they don't get access to these resources. So identity has always been tricky, and I think part of it is, it's like a learning, figuring out what it means to me. And I think, Teresa, my partner, she's a poet, and so and she's more than just a poet, but she does a lot of poetry with other folks, people of color, indigenous people, and housed folks. All these terms, and people trying to deal with this colonial society. So she one of the elders who was in the event, African American woman, said, I define me. And I feel that's very empowering, for folks who want to, like figure out themselves as a human being, as a person with your own experiences, because that's something every human being has, is your own experiences. I can't take your experiences away; those are yours. But there's ways in which we're taught that can be settler colonial. Like if I say, like if you start saying, my experience. Oh no, you keep me going. Yeah,
okay, cool.
It's still good. We still have time right here. There's ways of identifying. Like, hey, I'm going to identify as, I don't know. What's a good example where you're actually like dismissing and erasing other people? It's
Well, Latino.
Yeah, I guess Latino, right? Like
Right.
we didn't create those terms. The settler colonial government gave people those terms, right? And the colonizers gave us those terms. So,
I'm not Latin, so I'm not Latino, but catch me on the corner with a bag of hot Cheetos.
right? And hot Cheetos now. Hot Cheetos is part of our peoplehood now, right? So,
fuckers.
but all in all, is just like, well, then how do we then respect the peoplehood of the indigenous people of the lands that we're on? And just give
that
us
part.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to buy land and start a commune with their friends, but it's not that simple.
Mm-mm.
Please.
It's a lot of unlearning, a lot of giving yourself that compassion and patience, right? Because we're all colonized, and but I do think that our connection with the lands that we're on, learning how to do land stewardship work, is everyone around the world, all indigenous people have had to have a connection with the land in order to just survive. So there's a practical aspect to it, but then identify like, hey, there's some folks who have the lake within the area they grew up in. Their lake is like this spot, like yeah, everyone knows about that lake. Everyone fishes there, right? And then there's ideas and like sustainability studies of like the commons, right? So if someone overharvests that lake, then now everyone else who around that area, there's no more fish for them. So there's that sense of like, we got to practically develop an economic system so we don't screw up, So then you have this idea of economics, and then, what we should know is that our economics was always tied to land, ecology. I always say this. It all stems from the same words, ecology, economy. So, while we're talking about gentrification, well, that's an economic issue, because you're talking about people who have a lot of money, who have a lot of access because of that money, and racism is part of this system too. So they're gonna push out people who don't have those economic privileges and put them in a worse situation, or at least now they're being displaced, and displacement is never easy, especially when it's unwanted. It's sort of it happened without you even aware. There's refugees. There's people leaving areas because they're unsafe. So, displacement is something, a lot of us come from. And now it's like, well, then how do we continue to fight and be like, no, we got to fight and work with the land that we're on and not continue this cycle of like settler colonial violence. And so a lot of it is just like, sharing our stories, challenging assumptions.
Yeah.
And it starts there, Some people are like, yo, I want to come here and I want to buy a big house and I want to have all these things. But you were taught that. Like, who the heck told you you needed to get married, get a big house, have 5 cars, you're in charge, I'm quoting Cypress Hill, but but yeah, like who taught us that? So what does it look like to do things and live within the land?
That's when that American when you have that moment where the American dream gets realized into like, holy shit, it's an American nightmare. And this is actually terrifying, and like what was being sought has like led to the like suppression of our souls, and that was like an intergenerational thing, and to understand like that there were also the conditions of whatever thing that was happening, and then it come all back around, and who's responsible for it is like it's usually war, like in a lot of times for a lot of people, and war is like an economy of its own, but that is like resources come from like actual like desecration of lives and of places, and that's where the money grows. It's just so weird.
Well, like war, right? And there's multiple definitions of war, right? We can look at how, our ancestors did war, and you can compare it, and I feel like folks should compare. Like, I just want to get more clear on certain terms, right? Like colonization and all that. And I feel like...
And check out the band With X War, their native punk band and stuff.
That's what's up.
I saw them on... Yeah. What they played at the Farce, like, maybe a couple years ago, but then they, like, had a TikTok video that went viral, like, a couple months ago.
But, in terms of war, I mean... what I learned was like a lot of the war within tribes was based on individual concerns, not this where we have nations, right? Nations are not communities. Nations aren't, like this. Again, it goes back to identity. Like people say, like, "Oh, well, I'm an American." All right, but usually people mean they're from the United States, not Central America, not South America. So there's this national identity, right? But then what does that mean? Like, what is your connection to land if you only identify with national identity? Well, then everything that the nation teaches you, everything that you learn from their institutions, their schools, the boarding schools, their colleges, their churches, the media. So, we already have to navigate all these institutions that were created by colonizers. So what is this sense of place and sense of belonging for ourselves? In a decolonial way, that's the question, or that's the journey, right? The journey of healing is unlearning and growing. But war, we got nations going to war. People telling you, hey, I'm gonna draft you. My dad was in the end of the Vietnam War, right? So he grew up in a low income community right here in Boa Heights, and same thing that we're dealing with now in terms of substance abuse and all that, turns people to this, I gotta join, I gotta be a part of something, so I'm gonna go with whatever my friends are doing. So that war, he didn't create that war, and that's something that he'd learned and he passed down to me, is like, this war is not for us. This war, he was stationed in Germany, and he saw Jewish people and Germans and people working and helping together. So he's like, why is it that we're fighting for this, fighting these countries and fighting these places when I see the people working together, you know what I mean? And then again, he witnessed his own, fellow soldiers who were doing horrific things to, the women and all that. And he was like, this is not, and he ended up in prison 3 times because he was lashing out against the army. He punched his sergeant, he bit a dude's nipple off. It was like, they were trying, because a lot of racism back, still.
Dad?
So, he went to prison 3 times. But it's like, that's because he was trying to fight that inner war, because he's like, this is not my war. Yeah. And so for a lot of folks, you shared TikToks about this too, like, they always send poor people to war. And poor people is not just, you know, economic, it's spiritual. Like, we don't, it's hard for us because we've been so displaced. We don't have those ancestor stories that were should have been passed down. We don't have that connection and knowledge of healing, knowledge of you know, like music and stuff, right? So, well, fortunately, music seems to find its way. You know, and I think music is such a powerful medicine to keep on that generations. But war, you know.
But yeah, when we're colonized, what we have is our nation identity, and then the nation provides whatever you to be pledged to, and that's usually under some like blind obedience through like generations of like experienced trauma, and then like everyone's just trying to be the best like American they can, you know, when America itself or like the USA is the worst. So.
It's the worst to live up. And I know there's gonna be people out there being like, you know, well, we have a lot of advantages and luxuries and a lot of things to do in the United States that other countries don't have. And though that is true, right? We have a lot of privileges, but those privileges only exist because you got to think globally now. You got to think, how does the United States, as this settler, colonial, imperialistic machine, extract resources from other countries? You know what I mean? We didn't. The United States doesn't build these devices. They get it from other countries, and they implement, you know, imperialistic strategies to you know, oppress those people, and then oppress the land, you know. So in Central America, you know, I've been learning more about that too. It's like, damn, we've been fucking them up for 200 years plus. Our economic situation now is because of our exploitation of those folks in Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. And then we get the narrative in the United States is like, oh, you know, well, why the fuck are they coming over here and migrating over here? What are you gonna do? You stole all the resources, you know. So it's very we're very sheltered.
I saw this meme today of like Kamala Harris. It was like Kamala Harris's speech where she's telling migrants, do not come, but it's like her video is like put into like Pornhub, and it says like Kamala Harris like jerk off instructions.
Oh gosh. Damn. Well, so funny you bring that up, because then it's like interpretation, right? So I think critical thinking is so important. And yeah, I remember, because a lot of people I grew up around with were raised Catholic and raised in studying the Christian Bible. And there was like this passage I remember reading, and like it was talking about Abraham or something, and he was like naked or something. I gotta read it, right? And I'm not trying to disrespect anyone who still believes in all that, but you know, I'm putting it into context of
Abraham Lincoln.
Abraham Lincoln. Anyways, Abraham Lincoln was in the Bible, and he's naked, and then his son or something. And so I interpreted it completely like very like. I was like, what the hell's going on?
Oh, when you were in your younger years, when you
studying,
were religious,
studying the Bible and stuff. And I ended up studying with like Jehovah's Witness church too, so that was interesting. But
when you came across that passage and it was talking about Abraham being naked with his son, and what was your experience?
My interpretation was like, what the hell's going on? But everyone else's interpretation was like something else. Like I can't even articulate, because it was just I was like, wow, like I read the same thing. How did I interpret it this way? And that's honestly an important thing to realize, because we all have our interpretive frameworks, right? Our ways of seeing and reading the world. And I came to a realization, like, man, a lot of the ways I was taught to see the world, like I used to cry trying to go to bed because I was terrified of going to hell. You know, I used to have negative self-image because all you see is white, you know, aesthetics. And, you know, there's tons of things we can kind of pinpoint within white supremacy that has, you know, oppressed and has had an impact on us and has traumatized us. But thinking critically can liberate us, you know what I mean? Like, I think I think it's Du Bois, or he talks about the master and slave dialect, right? Well, when does the slave become the master? You know, it's when now he sees he has the power, and he has more power than someone else. And that is through like critical thinking and challenging, our own assumptions to then have that, that mental liberation. So, um, I'm surprised we got this from talking about that Pornhub meme from Kamala Harris.
Well, because then, but it was before it was, and it was Kamala Harris, jerk off instructions, but it was a video of her telling migrant people,
do not come.
Yeah.
So
Which
we can interpret
we cope
things.
with the jokes. We cope with the jokes because that shit is so fucked up. It is so bad, and like, and I had seen this other video where like it was of her talking prior to her, being elected, and she's like, in her performance, supportive of migrant people coming and like welcoming of migrants, and that's like her philosophy and paradigm, but nope, they put up that wall, while our Kumeyaay relatives were resisting it, and Tohono O'odham relatives were resisting it and trying to protect their spring. They put up that dumb really big wall, and they're gonna still continue to stand by it. And it's just like, and it's like 2020 was supposed to be the like insurrection year, and there's like supposed to be no more of this, but like really it's gonna continue going on in this violent cycle where they wear these they're different faces, but they're just the same like exploitative monster, and they call it, like, NPR is constantly calling it democracy, or like just like, but it's not, and it's, but like,
No, it's not democracy. I mean, the fact that a lot of us, like, one of the first tenets of democracy is a well-educated and well-informed group of people. So if we're all being indoctrinated, and all being taught to think and have these values, right? Like, we gotta fight for freedom and all that. Like, I'm just bringing it back to even the basic levels. Like, sometimes people have these axioms of the United States culture of and that shapes their worldview. You know what I mean? They think this is democracy, but it's like, no, we didn't decide to have two parties. You know what I mean? And what kind of democracy only has two parties?
Yeah.
Like, yes or no. That's your choice. That's your option. Yes or no. It's like, well, weren't we supposed to think about it? Isn't that the whole thing about being diplomatic about situations? Is having a discussion and making well-informed decisions? Well, all the mainstream media, it's all based on to propagandize, folks. And I was thinking about Kamala Harris. Like, what if we said the same thing to like gentrifiers, and like, do not come. Like, how do we like resolve those issues? How do we develop ways in which, like, well, we don't want them coming over here, but it's like,
oh, that's a good reflection. I think the difference is like is like privilege, right? And like, and then the like, and survival, because
they're trying to be capitalists. They're trying to come here and like they're literally selling. It's like $35 just to come to their gatherings on Flat Top Hill. Like,
we're talking about gentrifiers.
Gentrifiers now. We're talking about gentrifiers. So, and they learn those practices because that's what we're all taught. Hey, I got something trendy. Maybe I can get some bread from it. So I'm gonna go out and like start selling it. But that's the goal too. Like, is having these conversations around economics. Then, right? What does it mean to build that solidarity economy? What does it mean to reinvigorate the gift economy? There's people talking about like thinking of time in terms of economics. Like, how can I share my time and then exchange freely, or how can I barter, or how can I just do things without having money as an exchange, or how can we create within our own economic? People are thinking about like cryptocurrency and stuff like that. So the economics is a good thing for us to learn about and study and think about. How do we?
We're
practice
keeping the
that?
eco part in
Eco,
mind.
yeah.
But,
It has to be.
But someone said the fact that we have to keep settling for the lesser of two evils every 4 years is insane. And they think we're insane, like we're gonna fall for that shit,
Well, I mean, again, there's institutional power, right? So, like the money, I was thinking about the currency we use is called fiat money, right? So every currency, one, it has to be backed up by ideology. But then currencies that we have here are based on centralized power, so they have authority. They have people like court systems, the military, the police, the credit systems, the banks. These are institutions that reinforce that this is the currency you need to use, and if you don't use it, then you go through the court system, or you have to go face the police. Or so currency is also backed up by, the institutional power, which we understand, more as settler colonial power. Before, people think it was like gold and all that, but no, the currency we use here, the fiat, is like backed up by like debt, right? It's just I did something, you need to pay me. Like, this is how much you owe me. But how can we think of a decentralized kind of currency, a decentralized approach? And that's like what we're trying to do, is like decentralize like native plants, the cultivation, the propagation of native plants, because these are plants needed to decolonize, regenerate the land. And so when you have predominantly white owned native plant nurseries
in LA,
right here in LA, and they're profiting off the land regeneration movement, it's like, yo, your ancestors like fucked it up, and they built systems that continue to mess it up. And we need to have the conversation, to expand the idea of what does regeneration mean. It's not just planting plants. It's not just finally like, I should let the chicken be a chicken. I should let the cow be a cow. I should let the bobcat have its own space. I should let all the, it's beyond that. It's like, well, then I think it's about property too. How do we go away and move away from all the private property ownership, the ideology, right? More of communal ownership, and I know folks are gonna probably think like, communists and stuff like that. Again, those aren't systems that we designed either. Like, we got to think regeneratively. We got to think ways in which there's balance, and it's not impossible.
Yeah.
You have tribes that were able to live sustainably with the buffalo, but what did the colonizers do? They killed all the buffalo, and then they destabilized their economies. Seems like we still do that today, right? So have those conversations. I don't know what it looks like. It's specific, right? Decolonizing Boa Heights, decolonizing San Fernando Valley.
Wherever y'all are at.
It's place specific. I don't know what it looks like in your area,
but do hit us up so we can talk about it.
Have those conversations. And the peoplehood matrix was a concept that really helped put it in perspective, because then you buy and sell, behaviors. I use ceremony and behaviors almost interchangeably, but not completely, right? Ceremony has a lot of intentions. Behaviors is sort of like, what people are doing. Some people are trying to recycle more. All right, well, that's the relationship with the land trying to change. So the peoplehood matrix was a good framework to at least be able to think critically when we have these conversations about, healing our communities. So
I think we had a real good combo right now. Yeah.
I think it was terrible, man. I should be asleep right now. No.
Well,
Sleep is important too. Sleep, like, also care about yourself, especially for the BIPOC community out there. Like, care about yourself. Don't run on the colonizers' time.
There's one thing I could talk about too before we end. Because I want to check to see how Pluto's doing. But
yeah. I was texting her too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was telling her.
What did they say?
We're good.
They're good.
Well, yeah. I think they're figuring out a resolution.
I guess. Well, you want to text them right now? Because that's the thing.
Oh,
that's why I'd have to like. Well, you want to text them? Like, what did they say?
Yeah.
They just say oh, okay. They're. Oh, okay. I just asked them, you good? And put Dochli.
Oh, okay. So what we're doing right now is trying to help someone right now who's helping someone else who's unhoused.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of that helping is loaning the resources in your community, and then asking why, why don't we have resources in our community? So just sharing some of that knowledge, right? So like Showers of Hope, if you haven't heard about Showers of Hope, it's a mobile shower unit that provides showers for folks who are experiencing homelessness. I got to be a part of it. its fruition.
Yeah, and that's like very specific to like what's happening this evening. Is that like this person was trying to get a place, but all the motels are booked. And they but really though they like need they more want to get a room to take a shower, so Showers of Hope is doing like tomorrow. Um, they hold space for showers, and then you and Teresa have shared stories with me when like that y'all were helping them out when they were starting off, and then they've just like continued to do that work, but like yeah, sometimes things happen with like certain people, and I like think about it's just certain people that need support in the community, and then I think about like how I don't really sometimes I'm not too aware of like where the resources are at, but and then I think about you, you know, then I think about also like because Joe does a community outreach with unhoused people, and but like you know it also shouldn't be like it's just like support and resources and stuff. There should be so much more of that, like, you know, and like kind of an example with tonight, like the person needed help getting a room, and just Ellie's going through the project room key thing, but like you're reflecting that in the state where it's at right now, like it's super slow and you gotta wait to get a spot, and then there's just like not enough resources.
Too much bureaucracy, too much red tape, you know. So direct action, you know, like how do we create direct action, mutual aid ways of organizing systems so that, you know, we can provide the immediate need. You know, you see folks who are able to come together, like with like Hurricane Katrina and like a lot of these natural disasters. People came together, they're like, yo, let's just do this direct action right now. Mm-hmm. And so you know, here in LA it's so hard because the resources are scarce, and a lot of us can only operate within our capacity, and yeah, we need to have those conversations. See what we can do. Mm-hmm. And food and all that is good. Getting to know people, I have that advantage of getting to know people, hear the stories. You know, I hundreds of stories from the local people around this area who are unhoused. But then knowing like, well, what is the tangible thing? How do I get you into housing? How do I get you into seen by a doctor for your physical health needs, your mental health needs, your substance abuse or substance disorders, right? So there's not a lot of funding towards these programs, right? And we can argue on and on about Reaganomics and all that. So I am trying to figure out ways, you know, and I encourage people in their communities to figure out ways to organize around those issues, especially here at Boyle Heights. Like meth, for example, has been a big issue here. And it's still an issue, you know, since my dad was growing up here. And so PCP, angel dust, and heroin, you know, but meth, it's like, well, there's not a lot of meth resources out here for folks. And it's the easiest thing you can get when you're dealing with physical pain or something. And so, yeah, we got to have those conversations to see, like, how can we show up for a community? And, you know, do it with love and compassion and, you know, with care, and also cultivate that sense of belonging. You know, it can be very lonely when you're just on the street.
So I wanted to share, like, because there's this TikTok that brought up a lot of emotional processing for me, and it was like about the trauma response of freezing, and it's kind of like is changing the topic, you know, just to talk about this. So the video is like breaking down the behaviors of people whose like trauma response tends to be freezing, and their behaviors in various like situations, and talked about like secluding, like self-isolating, like and it's just like kind of in my own self-reflections. Well, I watched that TikTok, and then my reaction was like to freeze. and like it also brought up that like people will like be hyper focused on like planning for or like to preparing to be in some moment rather than like be in that moment. And so there's been a lot of like technical stressors for myself as an artist around like being an artist, and then all that gets alleviated when I like give myself the compassion to just like to be the art instead, like be the thing that's being made, or like be there for that thing that's being made. And so I'll freeze in my creative process when I'm in the future, and that's like it's like an anxiety trip. and I, so what I'm working through right now is like a lot of my like past art stuff. I'm like letting it go in a good way, so that I can show up presently for the like experience of the art, and then instead of like my future worries and future freezes, and just like that flow, you know. And then celebrating.
Then you jump very present.
Yeah.
You know, totally live. He's always like just comes into a present moment, and you're like, what the fuck? Where did you just transcend right now, bro? No.
yeah, it came from the future where I was like worrying about things that I can actively like in through being present can determine. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any questions, any comments, any reflections people would like to share?
Yeah.
This is.
I think there's about like 15 people or something.
Oh, right
on. 9 or 10 people. So, let us know if y'all enjoyed this, and we could be having more talks. We do, you know. There's just like in the past and recorded on Desacredized, and when we were doing Mashika Matrix with Michelle. But yeah, we're besties, so you'll get more of us. And yeah, if there are like any questions.
Right here on Instagram, someone commented.
Boom. Oh shit, haha, I haven't heard the nipple story. Fuck yeah.
Oh, the nipple story. Let me tell you, children, about the nipple story from my father.
Yeah. That's an older comment from earlier in the conversation.
People could interpret that who just joined us anyway. Like, what the nipple story? But you're gonna have to wait. Now you're gonna have to pay big money. You can follow me on my OnlyFans. Just kidding. Well, I don't know if folks like this. I mean, it'll be cool to join again, or you know, we could do this virtually or in person, or not even in the same room, same galaxy.
Yeah, no. Well, what this was supposed to be the radio show, and that would be like every other Thursday, at 10 p.m. So I'll try to post more frequently about that. That's always fun. We're supposed to listen to the Jesus Christ Superstar motion picture soundtrack, but we didn't get around to it. We weren't able to. We missed the whole radio show. So yeah. Peace, y'all. Bye.
Take care. Later, Arthur.
Oh,
good night.
Abolitionist Mutual Aid just joined. Maybe we should stick around.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Abolition mutual aid. Right on. That's like all of the terms.
Yeah. No, for real. All right, now we're leaving. Bye, pal. Though. Bye. A lot of people stay for a long time. You know?
Oh yeah, that's cool, man. Right here on Instagram.
Yeah.
Later, Arthur. I think Arthur's the only one.
Okay. Later, Arthur. Peace, peace, peace.
Mhm.